So really great to meet you all tonight, and it's really inspiring to see so many people here on such a beautiful evening, so kudos to you for your dedication. What Ali asked me to do was talk about what I think makes a good idea and give some examples within the VPL, the Vancouver Public Library context of those, so just to kind of share some real life examples. And I don't think that I have a lock on what makes a good idea, and what was interesting for me, and I know that there's a lot of expertise around this room, so I'm really just sharing from my own perspective. When Ali asked me to do this, it was an interesting exercise for me, because in the library context and in our operational context, ideas will come forward from staff through various venues or through various channels, and we'll look at them and we'll assess them based on a variety of different criteria. But I hadn't actually ever sat down and thought, what are the characteristics of the good ideas that come up in a really coherent or systematic way. So what I did is I went through a whole bunch of ideas that staff had brought forward over the last couple of years at VPL, and I started to identify, okay, what are the characteristics of these? And actually what happened was 3 themes emerged for me around these good ideas. And so what I did then is I thought, okay, well, these are the themes that I've identified. What do other people think? Am I a complete outlier on this? Or what do actual thinkers about this say about what makes a good idea? So I did a bit of snooping around and re-encountered a couple of writers that I had read a number of years ago. And I'll share with you what they say about innovation and good ideas. So the first one is Stephen Johnson. And I don't know if anyone here is familiar with him, but he wrote Why Everything Bad is Good for You. But he also wrote, very appropriately, a book called Where Good Ideas Come From. And what he talks about, he's actually a popular science writer. He's a media theorist and a technology theorist. And so when he talks about ideas, and what he says is that oftentimes when we talk about ideas and when we think about ideas, we think about them as spontaneously created, full entities that come up in a moment of genius. We have a light bulb moment. We have a eureka moment. Suddenly the switch flips and we know, and we say, aha, this is the idea. But what he actually argues in his work is that good ideas are actually networks of hunches and previous ideas that you're gathering and creating connections between from very disparate sources. Other people, things you've read, things you've watched, things you've encountered, and that the aha moment, the light bulb moment, is the moment when one piece fits into place and it almost activates that network of ideas. And so from that, so what he says out of that is that innovation and good ideas favor the connected brain and actually favor the collective brain. And he talks about the rise in innovation that arose through the Enlightenment, and what the catalyst environment in the Enlightenment is the invention of the coffee shop, where people come together from diverse perspectives and just talk about stuff and encounter ideas that are contrary to their own worldview and have to start thinking about things that they hadn't thought about before. In many ways, it's very similar to this context that the learnings that the Healthy City folks have put together for you today. Different people, different walks of life, different experiences coming together to share hunches and to share ideas and to share these connections. Maybe some of these nodes will connect. So what I took from him is build on the work of other people. There's no shame in copying, and there's no shame in borrowing. The other thing that I took from him around that is that we need to think across discipline, think outside of our silos of thought, of comfort, and really intentionally expose ourselves to ideas from other places, even if they're not our ideas, and even if they're not the feeds we're following, they're someone else's feeds, and generally this person really bugs me. Still expose yourself to those ideas, because they will create these types of nodes. The second person I re-encountered is a fellow named Matt Ridley. Don't know if anyone here has heard of him. He's actually a little bit contentious in some of his political theories, and some of his environmental economic theories are a little bit, in my mind, a little bit questionable. But he wrote a really interesting book called The Rational Optimist. And what he talks about in The Rational Optimist is the history of human progress. And what he argues in this book, looking from the Stone Age to modern day, is two things. The first is that innovation happens when we work for each other. It does not happen when we work just for ourselves. And so an important piece of innovation is division of labor, and recognizing that you don't have to do everything. And in fact, it's incredibly inefficient and ineffective for you to try to be everything to everyone. And what you ought to really do is find other people to do stuff for you that you can do stuff for in exchange, trade expertise, trade attributes, trade effort. And in doing so, we become stronger together through these types of partnerships. So collaboration is what I took out of his work. And so those were my three themes that were very common with the examples in the library, and I'll just share 3 examples with you. So the first one was around leveraging the work of others and building from the work of others. So public libraries have long played a really important role in bridging the digital divide. So since the early 1990s, we have provided public access computers for internet and for word processing and for people to create their own works. And so what we would do is provide, and what we have done over the past 20 years, is provide training programs for people to learn how to use the computer, how to access the internet. And we've trained hundreds of thousands of people across the country in this as public libraries. So what we saw happen in kind of the late 1990s, you may recall, we saw the initiation of web-based communities of practice and communities of expertise. Mining Company evolved into About.com. We had some locally based online communities that shared expertise, such as Suite101.com. What we saw in the early 2000s was the creation of the social network. And then what we noticed in libraries is that people started to come to us to ask for help on how do I start a Facebook account? How do I start a MySpace account? How do I do this in this social media sphere? And so we would teach them the mechanics, but there was something missing. And I couldn't figure out quite what it was, but one day our staff went over and talked to folks at UBC. And what they learned at UBC is that the library staff there were doing a pilot program with students, trying to teach students how to engage in an online context safely and manage their identity online. They called it the digital tattoo, right, program, which is as soon as you put something online, it's there forever, so make sure you want it there, right? So we took that back and said, students just don't need to know this, because as we all know, students were sharing lots of stuff on the web that many of them are probably going to regret in the future. But what happened was we thought, well, the general public actually needs to know this as well. Lots of people are out there creating Facebook accounts, personal archiving, and they don't necessarily understand how the web works and what this means for their ongoing identity, and even for their kids when they're posting pictures of their kids. What decisions are they making about their child's privacy in the future just by sharing their photos? So we started to do training on digital literacy about 4 years ago, borrowing from UBC. So that's an example of where we didn't actually invent it. We saw a great idea happening somewhere else. We asked their permission to leverage it, and now we've actually expanded it out. Another example, so the next example is one of sharing expertise and leveraging the strength of your community partners. So one of the things that we spend a lot of time on in libraries is, and one of the areas that we have a lot of expertise is early childhood literacy. The ability to read is critical to success in life. We all know this. If you're not reading if your kids aren't reading by grade 4, their chances of actually becoming strong readers are so diminished. It's remarkable. So early childhood interventions around literacy are critical. So we do a lot of that through our in-library story times, trying to develop a culture of reading within the family. But we also go out to daycares and do story times in daycares at the request of daycare providers. and we bring these types of activities, language, play, and things like that out into these community spaces. But the requests were coming in so extensively, we just didn't have the capacity to meet the demand with the staff that we had. So we have a few options. We can go to the city and say, we've got so much demand, we need more money. Well, times are tight. They're probably not going to happen. We could redirect resources from another part of the library into sending more people out into story times. But where do we cut, right? Do we stop buying books? Do we close branch hours? So how do we actually do that? We actually have a good investment there. We could say no, but that doesn't seem appropriate, and we certainly want to support this type of work. So what our staff did is they actually had a moment where they thought, aha, we train our staff how to do these types of literacy programs and to take these types of activities into the community spaces and to offer them in the library. Why can't we train early childhood care providers to do this? So we developed a program of professional development programs for early childhood caregivers. We bring them in, we train them how to do this, we put together kits so that they can take resource packets out to their daycares and deliver the programs themselves. So in that situation, we didn't say, this is our work, we have to do it all. We said, how can we leverage, our staff said, how can we leverage our expertise and our resources and your attribute of being in the community and your job in caring for kids? So there was a connection. And then the third example, one where think about connecting across disparate ideas and disparate silos or disciplines. We do a lot of work in libraries supporting the reading and supporting people's ability to read. In the area of literacy, we offer, so literacy being work with adults in particular who are struggling with reading. So many people are surprised by some of the statistics. Literacy is scaled on a graded continuum, levels 1 through 5. There is lower than level 1. Level 1 is adults reading at about a grade 3-4 level. 17% of Canadian adults are at level 1 or below in terms of their ability to read. So this is pretty serious in terms of ability to participate in economic life, social life, political life. It's really critical. Only 14 or 15% of adults are actually reading at levels 4 or 5. So gives you an idea of the general reading level of the public. So reading is pretty critical. You have to, it's like a muscle. You have to exercise it. You actually can lose literacy if you don't read. So one of the things that we do in the library to support literacy workers in the community is we provide access to what's called stepped adult readers. So basically what this is content for adults that are learning how to read. So the books will often look like very short paperbacks. I'm sorry I didn't bring an example for you. If you imagine a reader for a grade 2 student or a grade 3 student, but with content that's focused on adult interests, it's not children's content, it's adult content. But still, it's got big print, few words per page, fairly short, lots of pictures to reinforce the content. So if you're an adult learner learning how to read, and people are all around you, and they're reading on their Kobo, or they're reading their books, or they're reading on their phone, or they're reading a magazine or a newspaper, are you going to whip out your adult reader and start to read? No, because the stigma around not being able to read is so extreme, it's heartbreaking. It is something that people keep very close to themselves, don't want to admit to other people. There's a lot of shame involved. So it's something that's really, really isolating. And so reading becomes something to be ashamed of and something that's very isolating. So we have community librarians that work out in the community, and they work with community organizations that support adult learners. They work with, and they encounter adult learners in many places, and they are aware of the stigma. They're aware of the challenges in actually getting people to a point where they're comfortable reading adult readers, which are so incredibly important for reading development, but are so shameful for many people. So on the other side of our business, the other side of our house in the library, we have staff that work on digital collections. So most people have heard about ebooks and know that a lot of trade paperback and trade fiction are now switching to electronic. So people are borrowing books from the library electronically, downloading them to their reader. If you didn't know you could do that, just check it out. We've got a huge collection. And But what we've noticed in library lending and also in the publishing industry is when e-readers and downloadable ebooks became popular, there was one genre of literature that skyrocketed in terms of use, went through the roof in terms of book sales and in terms of library lending. Can you guess what it is?
Technology.
Romance. Right? Because imagine you're on the bus and you whip out your Harlequin romance or your bodice ripper, and the covers are usually quite graphic. There's a lot of shame and stigma for people that read romance. So now that you can read on a Kobo or on an iPad and you're on the bus, no one knows what you're reading, right? So you could be reading anything. So our community librarian was talking with some of our digital collections librarians and said, oh, stigma. So what she did is she said, I want to do a pilot. So we bought 30 Kobo readers. We loaded it with electronic adult stepped reader content. We connected with a literacy group at the Carnegie Center. We gave out the Kobos to adult learners in that program, and the results were spectacular. We left them with the readers for a month, and they came back. They enjoy reading. They're proud of it. 30% after 3 months found the money to buy their own Kobo readers, and they're reading. Over 50% are now reading regularly. So it's amazing, right? Because now there's a pride and there's a privacy as well in the reading process. So these are 3 really small examples of innovative ideas, I think, that really illustrate, build on the work of other people. No shame in copying. Don't try to be everything to everyone. Leverage the strength of the community network that you're a part of, and really try to think across different disciplines and connect.
Thank you.
Okay.